congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know if enjoyed is the right word since I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, but very well done. With that in mind, what was the idea that first made you excited to tell this story, that you thought something special was there?
If you're in my job, that is to say a writer director who's not kind of affiliated with any studio or has any deal or has anybody kind of vouching for them, and you're just kind of trying to do your best to poke through the noise of everything. You're just trying to give yourself the best chance of success at being noticed. And so I kind of felt like it'd be a fun trick in a way to just pretend like it was going to be Silence of the Lambs, like just like fake it for a minute and to kind of be like, oh, it's Silence of the Lambs, audience. Like you feel comfortable with that. You know what that's like. You know what to expect from that. And to kind of do that for a while and then take a really sharp left turn. So once I kind of had that plan in mind, it began to take shape.
Well, that kind of leads perfectly into kind of my next questions on here. So my formative years were the 90s with all of those classic serial killer films. Of course, Silence of the Lambs, Seven, but so many others as well. I mean, how much was that just very much key to the idea of kind of calling back to that era of films? How much intentionality was that?
100%. I mean, it was meant almost to be sort of almost a pop art look at those things, to sort of reference them directly, to actually take scenes and story points directly out of those movies. I mean, the fact that Longlegs, that Dale Cobble gives himself up in the middle of the movie is just a crib from Seven. It's just a move that they did, and it's meant to be a move that they did. I'm not trying to pretend like I came up with that idea. I'm actually trying to pretend like I didn't come up with that idea, that I'm referencing another serial killer movie, a good one. There aren't very many, in order to sort of get a little bit of kind of credit with the audience, I suppose you'd say. Like, it's so, as a filmmaker, you want to try to create a rapport with the audience where they're with you. And so to steal from the classics felt like a sly and fun and obvious way to do that.
Well, even to that point, you take from them, but there's always something about it that's different, whether you talk about with Silence of the Lambs and then it has a supernatural element, or even where it goes with the person being captured in the middle of the film. There's always that kind of twist to it. Were the other ones besides kind of Seven and Silence of the Lambs that kind of you were pulling from?
I mean, Zodiac, the coded letters from the Zodiac Killer was a thing. Other than that, I sort of kept to just those essential beats and feeling like those were the really recognizable, almost like refrains, like a song that everybody knows and can sing together.
Somewhat to what you said at the beginning of pulling from Silence of the Lambs, kind of starting it with that point, the movie does a great job of balancing the tone of being very grounded in our reality and at the same time having kind of these supernatural or fantastical elements. How did you go about trying to balance it and not feel like you lost the audience when you leaned into that?
It's funny. It's very, there's like the super intention when you're making something. There's sort of like the big idea, and then once you're in the big idea and you feel like you've kind of locked in, intentionality is a slippery thing. You kind of just proceed as you see fit. I know it sounds kind of wishy-washy, but I'm the only person making this stuff up, and at a certain point, I kind of trust myself. And you kind of it's like being blind in a way, like walking with a stick, and kind of like just try not to bump into things. If that makes any sense. I mean, it's like the creative process. It's hard to express. You're making stuff up. You're listening to the source. You're listening to the muse, and what it gives you, it gives you.
Well, it worked this time.
I appreciate it.
Another thing that worked really well for me was the specific way the shots are composed, with someone very centered, a lot of kind of empty space. The sound design creates this environment where as you're watching the movie, your brain starts filling in the gaps with something terrifying. How did you go about crafting those moments to just create this constant sense of unease, basically from beginning until the credits roll?
It's just what you said. I mean, I think that the director of photography and I, we established early on that one of the rules that we were going to engage, you kind of want to set some rules for yourself. So you have a guideline so you don't get sloppy and you don't kind of get approximate. You feel deliberate. And one of the things we always wanted to do was have an observational camera personality, right? So the camera's never up in people's faces. The camera's always hanging back a little bit in a wide space using wide lenses. And the idea behind that is just to put the audience in a place of helplessness.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't reach out and grab the thing. You're not close enough to stop the thing from happening. It's like watching a car crash from across the street. You see it happening in slow motion. You know it's going to happen. You can see these two cars are going to hit. And you couldn't stop it if you tried. And you'd end up watching this thing unfold. Also, using headroom in the frame is something that seems to help with that. Like, a lot of filmmakers, camera people frame with the top of the frame right over the head of the actor. And for me, that doesn't create there's no mystery above them. Yeah. There's nothing hanging over them. Literally, there's no empty space.
There were so many shots in it where you're just seeing a person walk in a hallway and you're terrified of what's going to happen next. And whether it did happen or it didn't happen, it was equally effective at creating just tension all throughout the entire film. Were there any particular movies that kind of inspired that specific style of building tension and unease?
I mean, it's the Stanley Kubrick thing, right? Like The Shining does that over and over and over again. And Kubrick's use of lenses, I think that's something that filmmakers probably, certainly myself as a younger person, noticed right away, is the use of wide angle lenses, really wide angle lenses, 16s and 18s and 14s and things, create that weird distance and that weird sort of warped sense of space and the kind of uneasiness that comes with that. The off balance way of looking at the world through such a wide lens really does put you in an off spot.
Well, even to that point, there were shots where in the movie where they walk up some stairs, and even the nature of that wide angle was just such unease. There's a shot where we suddenly are seeing her upside down and just creating a constant sense of disorientation.
Well, the upside down shot we came to later. I mean, we had the move of her waking up in the bed and then moving the camera so that it tilted up to find her in his lair. In the editing room, I wanted to match the shot of her in memory with her mom when she was a kid. They're facing this way. And in the shot we had of Maika, she's facing this way. And so I said, well, if I flip it that way, so that's a post-production flip in the editing room. You flip it to look that way so it matches the previous scene better. Then it's like, oh, let me see that played forward. Yeah. And then you play it forward and, oh, she stems up backwards. Oh, she's on the ceiling. Oh, her world is upside down. Let's keep that. And that's just making a movie, man. That's just finding things you didn't know you had.
Well, I guess that's even kind of the follow-up question I had on it was somewhat up to that point of how much is in the script, how much is on the set, how much is in the edit.
Everything is in the script. I will say that everything that's in the movie is in the script. Nothing is sort of winged. We don't make things up on the fly. When you're making independent movies or any movies really, there's just no time for that. Yeah. There's no time in the schedule for messing around. The one thing that we did have time, there was a day when we had Alicia Witt and we had her in her nun garb and we had like an extra 20 minutes or something like that. And so we poured blood all over her and we got that fabulous shot of her as the nun with the blood all over her, which became really a major part of the ad campaign. We got that because we had half an hour extra.
Kind of to that point, with this movie, you get a new iconic Nicolas Cage performance and maybe his most terrifying performance yet. How much of building that character came in the script? How much did he bring to the table? How much was discovered along the way?
The great thing about Nick is that he lives to be in service of the text, right? So he signed on to my movie. I don't know how it goes for other people, but he signed on to my movie because he loved the script, he loved the words, and he didn't want to change any of them. And so everything that Nicolas Cage says in the movie is something that I wrote. It was in the draft when he got it. We didn't add a lot of things. We didn't take away a lot of things. I offered to him, man, you can say whatever you want. You can riff, you can improvise, you can throw the script out. I don't care. And his really, really refreshing and confidence-building answer for me was, oh, no, I want to do everything as you wrote it. So, the truth is that most of it is written. Most of it is there as a text, and that the good news is that Cage is not there to service himself. He's there to service the project.
You kind of answered this a little bit, but how much did the movie change from script to final film?
It changes only in that certain sections of it. What I found myself struggling with was that I had long scenes of exposition where people were talking to each other about what was happening.
Yeah.
And that's really not a good thing to have. And in reading in a script, it kind of makes sense because you're catching up with the characters. But once we got into the editing room, I found that a lot of the exposition I had to play over kind of montage and things like that.
There's a lot of the overlaying. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to make it palatable and just to make it visual again. There was a lot to say. There was a lot of explanation to do, and even still, I think some stuff remains pleasantly unexplained. But yeah, we had to sort of replace some on-camera stuff and just sort of make it into voiceover so that it would flow a bit better.
Final question. I love to recommend some hidden gem to people that they've never heard of. What's a movie that you love to recommend to people and introduce them to?
Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall His Past Lives. I mean, I think a lot of people know this movie. It won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, whatever year it was. But it's a movie from Thailand called Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall His Past Lives. Wild movie. I mean, there's no real way to talk about it. It's a ghost story, sort of. It's a parallel universe ghost story, kind of. But it's so much more than that. It's a really beautiful film. Anybody who cares at all about movies should see Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall His Past Lives.
Excellent. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Dave.
Great job with the film.
I'm glad you liked it.
Great.
I'm glad you liked it.